What is the most disgusting thing you've ever seen? A couple years ago I was a supervisor at a beach. Every night before we closed we would go clean the bathhouses and take out garbages and stuff like that. This one night I was cleaning out the men's restroom and this old man came in and went into a stall to do his business. From the sound of it, he was exorcising some sort of demon. Anyway, he finishes up, no flush, walks out of the stall, makes eye contact with me and nods. Then walks up to a garbage can and pulls his pants down to the floor and his briefs down to his knees. He must not have pulled his pants down to do his business, because it was all in there. He proceeded to scoop it out with his bare hand and dump it into the trash can. When he was seemingly satisfied, he pulled his dirty underwear up and pulled his pants back up, whipped his hand on his back pocket, and walked out without washing. I just kinda stood there mortified. I left the bathroom and my shift mate said I looked like I saw a ghost, I was so white. I work as a gas station cashier in a rural area, and one day we had a young woman come in, absolutely reeking and had what looked like shit and semen all over her shirt. She apologized and said she worked in horse breeding. I didn't ask. So I work as an embalming assistant while in embalming school. A few weeks into the job, the embalmer who was training me decided to not refrigerate a body we were taking to the crematory. She was notorious in the funeral home for lazy and sloppy work, as well as being spiteful toward any other workers in the building. Over a 4-day weekend. Unfortunately, the decedent was septic and morbidly obese, and a nursing home didn't clean them well, likely for months before their death. So grey and yellow-green fluid was leaking out from the patient's urinary catheter onto the floor into a 4-foot wide puddle, and the smell had seemed to create its own barrier in the vicinity of the body. The body had been bloated with the tongue and eyes protruding, and purge coming out the nose, and blisters filled with blood had already formed all along the skin. Still, because of this embalmer's screw up, we had to move the body regardless of the amount of nasty we just walked into. We lift the gentleman off the table and transfer him to a cot. When it came time to roll the cot out to the transporting van, someone had to unlock the wheels to the cot to move the body. That someone ended up being me. While this embalmer waited, I should have figured out she was up to something, but I was oblivious and solely trying to just get the job done so I could scrub my soul. I was unlocking the last wheel when suddenly the embalmer starts shaking the cot violently, and grey and green sludge fell off the cot and directly down my forehead and face, seeping under my mask. The smell wasn't just a rot smell. It was the smell of pus and decay, and infected bowels and long-standing urine mixed into a lovely cocktail of loathing for the living world. It was enough to where the smell burned into the lizard part of my brain, randomly giving me phantom smells for the years to come. I remember this being the only time where I actually shut down emotionally, and I robotically walked to the sink and scrubbed my face, much to the laughter of the embalmer. She ended up getting fired for doing other similarly disgusting things, and I still haven't came across anything as bad as that for me. I'm probably going to hell for this. I was driving a friend of mine to an out-partied program we both attended. Everything was going fine and dandy until my friend screams at me to pull over, which I do, and then I smell it. Turns out she was abusing laxatives pretty badly, and she had basically had a poop attack in my car. I was not mad at first, until I dropped her back home and realized it was all over my seat. Also, my seats are fabric, not leather or something that I could have easily wiped off. This was like 3 years ago, and I still get the occasional whiff of it every now and then. I felt bad, but come on now. I've shared this story a long time ago. Zakipa here. I'm fairly certain we had a guest intentionally get pissed on by a lion. He came into the zoo early in the morning when we opened, and I first saw him standing near the lion enclosure, right up against the fence, when we let the lions out of the night stall. We had signs warning that the lions spray urine to mark territory, and they've been known to spray guests up to 6 feet through the fence, but I figured he was unaware. So I tell him, be careful, back up, the lions spray you if you're that close. He nodded, backed away, kept his head down. Half an hour later, as I'm cleaning, I see him right back up to the enclosure fence, closer than before. I'm not kidding, you're going to get sprayed, I told him. Backed away again. That was the last I saw of him. but I had a coworker telling me half an hour later that sure enough, some guy got pissed on head to toe by our male lion before walking straight out of the zoo. We got complaints all the rest of the day about how the bench area that he walked through reeked like cat piss too. Fun times. I used to work in the medical field, and I was working with a doctor who was draining an abscess. She kept squeezing it harder and harder until it shot pus out, and it splattered on the doctor, me, and maybe worst of all, the wall behind her. I want to say thankfully the wall caught the most of it, but I was tasked to clean it up, so having to work with it post body expulsion wasn't my favorite day. I was an anesthesia tech for a while. One time a woman had a botched hysterectomy at a different hospital. The surgeon had nicked her colon and her abdomen filled with pus and shit. After 3 days she came to us septic. In the OR we used large suction containers on wheels. I forget how many gallons they took, but we filled 3 of them on her. That one was the worst thing I've ever smelled. I think it was like 2nd grade during lunch. The way the cafeteria was set up, it was also the school's auditorium. Down the middle between all the lunch tables, the trash cans were lined up. This kid apparently drank too much chocolate milk and ran to one of the trash cans and started to throw up. As he threw up, he proceeded to catch it with his hands and slurp it back up. This caused most of the cafeteria to then start throwing up, and the cafeteria being thrown into chaos. I used to work for the fire department. A few years ago we were called out to a restaurant for a man who had an altered level of consciousness, a common generic description for somebody who's not acting right. We arrived at the busy lunch spot and a waitress motioned to a man sitting in a booth. We started asking him the usual questions when I noticed he kept drinking something colorful out of a tall glass. My captain asked him what he was drinking. The man replied, "Vomit." The ambulance arrived right immediately after, and the man kept drinking his vomit that he had thrown up into the glass prior to our arrival. We would continue to be called out to deal with this man and his mental illness, but that was one of the grossest things I've seen, among many.